Good afternoon, everyone. I am Master Som Mithul, convener of Pune CWIT IAI Students Chapter. Would like to welcome our today's expert speaker, Mr. Manoj Somvanshi sir. Today he is going to share his expert knowledge regarding industrial automation. Before commencing with the lecture, I would like to share a few things regarding our expert Manoj sir. Sir has completed his BE in Instrumentation and Control from Vishwakarma Institute of Technology, Pune in 2001. He is currently working in Cockburn Automation Private Limited as a operations manager since 2012. He has worked as an R&D engineer at DataPro Electronics Private Limited from 2001 to 2003. He has also worked as a system engineer at Emerson Export Engineering Center from 2003 to 2005. He has also worked as a technical lead at Robert Bosch India Limited from 2005 to 2008. He has also worked as a project manager at Infosys Technologies Limited from 2008 to 2010. He has also worked as a lead engineer at ABB Qatar from 2010 to 2012. He has an overall experience of 20 plus years on process automation, data center solutions, and industrial automation projects. We are so grateful to welcome such an experienced expert for this lecture. I'm sure that everyone will enjoy this expert lecture and implement it in your future. Once again, on behalf of all, I welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Som, for the detailed introduction. Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we'll have a brief introduction of what industrial automation is. Before that, I'll just give you a idea of what Cockburn Automation does. So I'm a co-founder in this company. We started this in 2012. We work basically in process automation and industrial automation as well as data center solutions. We use products from companies like Siemens, ABB, Rockwell Automation. So based on the project requirements, we select the PLCs and then we provide solutions. So we have been growing quite well over the period, and now we are around 45 engineers based in Magarpata city. And we are doing projects across India. Okay. So this is the agenda for today: basic introduction, then the automation basics, system features, typical system architecture. I'll show you briefly what solutions we are doing. It may not be exactly same across the industry, but you would get a fairly good idea about it. Then measurement and control, communication protocols, graphical user interface, and finally we'll have a Q&A if time permits. Okay. So diving in right to the definition, what is industrial automation? Industrial automation is the use of control systems such as computers or robots and information technology for handling different processes and machineries in an industry. So if you see the specifications of the controllers or PLCs, what we have today, they are similar to the computers what we had earlier. Like you can consider a 486 computer or maybe a Pentium chip. So whatever specifications those computers had, those are now the specifications which are available in a PLC. So that is how strong the PLC has grown. It is not exactly in line with the computer development, but overall there is a fairly strong computing power which has been added to the PLCs. Moreover, it provides a very granular real-time information about what is happening in your plant, and the people, that is the operators who track this plant, they are able to see the complete overview of the plant. So this tool is very essential nowadays to analyze the real-time as well as historical data. Okay, so I'm sorry, just one question. This is the final year team or hello? Are the students from final year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So see, for typically for electronics engineers, going forward, you have multiple paths when you go for pursue your engineering degree or MS degrees. So this is one of the options where you could maybe go for instrumentation or electronics, and there's one area where you could end up working. So it would really help if you have some idea of what you're getting into. Okay. So system features. So typically what industrial automation does is, I'll give you an overview. In a plant, you may have multiple equipment like boilers, reactors, then some material moving conveyors, etc. So they are all doing their particular tasks, which is expected from that machinery. And earlier we used to operate all these machinery manually. So now with the programmable logic controllers and SCADA systems, DCS systems, there's a lot of automation which has come into this whole scenario. Okay, so now you can have your boiler without even having any person to monitor it. Your boiler can run overnight. It can continuously generate steam, and all the data, all the parameters will get continuously logged in a historical trend. So even sitting at your home, you can watch what is the steam temperature, steam pressure. So those kind of features are now available in control systems. Okay, mm, that is the development that has happened in industrial automation. Earlier days, people were very skeptical about exposing the data outside the factory. So whatever plant equipment or whatever information was there, it was available on premise. That is, you need to be present in the plant to be able to have a look at the have a view of the data and understand what is happening in the plant. But nowadays, with all this encryption and security features, extending the VPN from plant up to your home network is also possible. So like we are doing this remote session, it is possible to remotely control the plant and monitor it, or monitor and control the plant as well. Okay, the other thing is the operators have the entire plant data on one click. So they get a complete bird's eye view of the plant. Live status of all equipment can be monitored. So as I said, this parameters, field parameters are available. An event log. So if there's any alarm or any event which is unexpected and it happens, so there is an event log available with the timestamp. So what happens is this control equipment that we install, they come with a time synchronization option. So all the equipment, they continuously have their time synchronized with their GPS satellites. So there is a time master, and the servers and controllers, all of them get the time from this GPS time sync unit. So maybe once every hour, the time is set in all the devices. So this helps you so that all the devices are having the same time. And when you analyze the timestamp, you get an accurate timestamp. So you know which equipment failed first, and then after that, which equipment got hampered. So where was the power loss? All those things. And load trends are available to monitor power usage. So earlier, in a bigger plant, it would be very difficult to evaluate like which equipment is consuming more power. All the equipment come with some rated consumption values, but over the time, what happens is some equipment get degraded. There may be some wear and tear in the bearings of motors, and then they eventually start consuming more power. And these losses can be avoided if you are able to monitor all the trends. Okay, and historical data is available for analysis. So now typically we can provide like 2 years historical data to the customers, so they can analyze what happened 2 years back, what was the scenario then, how much is the production now. So those kind of things. Okay. So coming to system components, this is a generic list. It may there may be some additional components which can be added to this, but this is typically what control system or a industrial automation system would consist of. So one is the DCS or SCADA software. So there's the complete package which provides you visualization, as well as it has the software for programming the logic, downloading to the controllers, communication drivers, stack, everything, redundant servers. So the reason I'm saying redundant is this is a high-end application where they do not expect any downtime. That is the reason they go for redundant servers. But I mean, this is not a mandatory requirement. If you have a simple application, just one boiler or one turbine and all, you can run it on a single server also. It's not required to have a redundant server. Then the operator PC, this is where the operator gets to see all the data. So redundant programmable logic controllers. So I'll explain what redundancy is. See, in a plant where if you have some area which is highly complex and you want to ensure that it functions all the time, then instead of having one PLC, you add a redundant set. So there is a primary PLC as well as a standby PLC. So the primary PLC is continuously monitoring and controlling the plant, whereas the standby PLC is updating all the parameters and being ready to switch into service. So if there's any failure on the primary PLC within 2 to 3 clock cycles, the secondary PLC is able to take over. So there is no hazard in your plant. So it continues to run smoothly even if there is a failure of one of the PLCs. So this is required in a high-end application. If it's your it is governed or it is decided by the application. So if you have a simple application, just material transfer from here to there, which you can afford to have a little downtime, in that case, then you don't need to go for a redundant setup. Okay. Then the remote I/O modules. So these input-output modules are the hardware which actually get the field data. Okay. So there are different types of signals. You have analog signals coming from the field. So you need analog input cards for that. Then you have analog output cards. Similarly, digital input and digital output. The names are fairly straightforward. I think you should be able to understand. But anyway, I'll give you an example. So analog input like temperature, pressure, those values are analog in nature. So you need an analog input card for that. You need an analog output card to be able to control something in a throttling manner. So if you're going to vary the control action from 0 to 100%, then you need an analog output card. So a typical example is a control valve. So that control valve, the control valve can be throttled. So meaning it has multiple states. It's not like a Boolean. It's not like a digital, where in digital you have only two states. One is open or close. In case of analog output, you have like innumerable scenarios. So it may be 21%, 22%. So you can vary, you can throttle that particular valve. Digital inputs, it can accept digital input from the field. So those signals will have only two states. So like solenoid valve, it will be either open or it will be closed. So if you get a 1, it will be, maybe you can assume it is closed. If you get a 0, it is open. Similarly, you can issue digital output commands from the PLC. So these are used to control some action. So maybe you want to start a motor, so you would issue a digital output command. So this would in turn energize a relay, and then the power would be to the motor. Okay, so that is why you need a digital output card. The communication modules. Nowadays, what happens is a lot of signals, a lot of equipment are able to send the data the communication bus. So in case of analog input or a digital input, each signal you need to have a separate channel. Okay, so let's say you have a 8-channel analog input card, which means you can take only 8 signals in the analog input card. But whereas in a communication bus, if I have a Modbus or a Profibus or similar communication protocol, so in that I can take at the same time I can take like 100 or 200 parameters from that particular device. So that data can be fed to the PLC. Okay. So there are some advantages that you can get a large amount of data on communication modules, but the The negative point is that this data is not time stamped. So this communication delay may vary from like 10 millisecond to 100 or 200 milliseconds. So you don't get the exact time of that particular event or that particular parameter. But in some cases that is acceptable. So you end up using these communication modules. And then the cabinets. So cabinets are similar to a cupboard where all this PLCs and IO modules are installed. There is provision to terminate the field signals on terminal blocks. You must have seen terminal blocks in your college, or I'm not sure. But anyway, those are there are two types. You can have unfused and fused TBs, where your field side wiring will terminate, and from there it gets connected to your digital and analog input cards. Okay. So coming to the typical system architecture. So this is the system architecture which we have used in one of our projects. This is highly confidential, as in it is controlled under a NDA. But just to give you a viewpoint, this is how the ABB system looks like. So this is a general architecture of the ABB 800XA distributed control system, okay, DCS. So right at the bottom, you have the field devices. So field devices like transmitters, or you can have your control walls, all those signals. Okay. So from there it is integrated into the PLC or the controllers. So this layer is the controllers. So I have shown 3 controllers here. Also, there is some possibility where the field devices can communicate directly to the client server network. Okay. So these devices are having a communication option. They are not hardwired signals. So all your hardwired signals will go through the controller. Then at the controller to the server communication, this is the Ethernet based communication. So all the data from the controller needs to be stored in your servers. So all the logic or program what you define and you download, that will get executed in this controller. This controller is a PLC, and typically like you must be knowing 8051 or 8085. So these are also similar to that, not exactly 8051 controller, but a high-end controller with a higher RAM and ROM capacity, as well as higher IO handling capacity. And so here you have Ethernet communication to the servers. All the data gets stored on this servers. You have SQL database here, and then the data is passed to the workplace client. So these are the operator stations where you can visually see what is happening in the field. And then you have some fire isolation device. This is similar to a firewall where you want to access this network from a third party or from an outside network. So then that is the reason you have this thin clients. Thin clients are normal stations where you do not have to install any specific software. Using a browser, you can access the data. So this is the plant IT network, and then through firewall, you can extend it up to the internet. So on the right side, you can see we have redundancy at communication level as well. What this means is there are 2 Cat6 communication cables from each controller up to the servers or the operator stations. So if there's any failure in one of the cables, the controller will still be able to function without any issue. And if both the cables are failed, still the program that you have downloaded into this controller will continue to execute, because this is a standalone controller. The communication which is happening upwards is only for the graphic screens or images which the operator is going to see. Okay, so it will work in a standalone manner, and the data will get stored locally for some time. So measurement and control. The important thing to understand here. So this is a thermometer. The reason I'm showing this is, let's take an example that you want to measure a temperature of this room or your classroom. So there is an option you can use a thermometer. It will show you what the temperature is. Okay, so that is a monitoring point. But if you want to control the temperature of your room, then just reading this on a thermometer will not help. So what you need for control is you need to have a PLC, you need to read the temperature. So you need to have a RTD or thermocouple transmitter to be able to transmit this temperature signal to a PLC. Okay. So there is a big difference here. The PLC doesn't understand what a thermometer is trying to say because there is no physical connectivity between a thermometer and a PLC. But we still want the PLC to know what the room temperature is. So that is the reason we install a temperature sensor with a transmitter. Okay, so the purpose of this sensor, the sensor part works similar to a temperature thermometer. It will sense the temperature. And then the transmitter, the purpose of the transmitter is to transmit this temperature signal to a PLC so that a PLC can understand this in an electrical format. Okay, so this is just an example of temperature transmitter, but this is applicable for all the parameters like pressures as well as level. So in some or the other form, you need to measure the physical parameter, and you need to be able to transmit that signal to a PLC via electrical form. PLC doesn't understand any other form. Okay. So for this analog input to be able to read the temperature, you need to have a temperature transmitter, which will send an electrical signal telling the PLC that this is the temperature of this room. Okay, this is a very basic thing, but it is important to know this. Okay. So this physical parameter, as I said, needs to be measured and transmitted in a form of an electrical signal for the PLC to be able to read it. Unless this signal is fed to the PLC, it is not going to understand what is the process value or what is the field value. So pressure level, you may be able to measure it, but unless if you have a transmitter and it interfaces to a PLC, the PLC will not know this. So there are different standards which are followed. One of the most commonly used signal is a 4 to 20 milliamp signal. Okay. So what this means is the transmitter, if you take a temperature transmitter and let's take an example that this temperature range is 0 to 100 degrees Celsius. Okay. So when your temperature varies from 0 to 100 degrees Celsius, your current signal from this transmitter will vary from 4 to 20 milliamp. So that is the signal. Okay. If your temperature is 0, your current will be 4 milliampere. If your temperature is 100 degrees Celsius, your current will be 20 milliamperes. And it will vary linearly in between. Okay. The reason is you have calibrated this particular transmitter in such a way that when the temperature reaches say 50 degrees Celsius, so you will get a 50% current signal. So that is 4 plus 8. So you will get you will get 12 milliamperes here. Okay. So that is how it will vary. The reason for using 4 to 20 milliamp instead of 0 to 20 milliamp, there is a reason. So if you use the signal 0 to 20 milliamperes, then there is a problem that if there is a cable cut or if there is some damage to the cable and you get 0 milliamperes at your PLC end, you cannot differentiate whether this is a 0 degree Celsius or there is a cable damage. So when you use 4 to 20 milliamp signal, so if the temperature is 0, you will continuously get 4 milliamperes. If your cable gets cut, then you don't get 4 milliamperes, you get 0 milliamperes. That is how you come to know that there is some damage or some fault with the cabling. So this is called as a live zero concept. Your zero is equated to 4 milliamperes. Okay, this is just to identify that there is a fault in the cabling. So similarly, you have voltage signal that is 1 to 10 volt can be used. Pneumatic signal is 3 to 15 PSIG. So you can see that all of them start at a higher value, not 0. Just to identify that there is some damage. So with the pneumatic signal, you always need a pneumatic to converter at the other end because your PLC doesn't understand a pneumatic signal. Okay. Then the communication protocols. So there are a lot of equipment. You must have seen multifunction meters or BTU meters, UPS. So multifunction meter or a meter at the maybe some of you must have seen this, or at least typically everyone has an electricity meter at their home. Okay, so these meters have a communication port which they can send all the data that is available in that meter to an external reading or external master. So typical example equipment with RS485. You have a two-wire interface. This is a serial protocol. You have a two-wire interface to read out the data from this multifunction meters. So then the other thing is like nowadays you have a lot of equipment which can directly go on the connect on the home LAN like a Wi-Fi or something. So these equipment come with a RJ45 port where it can support Modbus TCP or IEC61850 or any other LAN protocol, or it can have a wireless Wi-Fi module which it can connect to the LAN. Okay. So the purpose of connecting to these equipment is to get all the data that is available in those equipment. So since we are working in data center equipment, data center projects and all, the UPS is one of a very critical, you can say, component in this whole solution. So they are continuously monitoring the UPS because in case of a power failure, this UPS is going to immediately support all the servers. So the data center is a building or is an area where all your servers are housed. So all your typical Amazon, Flipkart, Google, all the servers, they are stored in this varied locations. Okay. So data centers where they have specific designated areas in which you can store these servers. So customer, let's say there are companies who build these data centers and then they lease out the space to companies like Google, Amazon, who use this facility to store the servers. So the prime concern of all these companies is that there should not be any downtime, not a single second of data or power loss. So that is the reason a lot of UPS, batteries, DGs are installed to ensure that even if there is a failure on the MACB grid, the building continues to be powered up. Okay. Then third-party integration supported by using OPC protocol. So when you have multiple solutions or multiple components like from different vendors, say a PLC you have from Siemens, and your SCADA system is from ABB, and you have some other devices from Rockwell. So when you want all these devices to work together and to be able to exchange data with each other, there has to be a common language which they are able to speak. So this OPC protocol is something similar to that. OPC protocol ensures that all these multi vendor products are able to integrate and exchange data with each other. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm bombarding you with a lot of information at this stage, but I'm just trying to give you a glimpse of whatever is possible. So this is the AC800M controller family from ABB. Okay, so the controller does high availability. So this is used in a lot of very critical applications like refineries. To give you an example, Reliance Refinery uses this. It is used in transportation. Delhi Metro is using the similar controller. Okay. So as I told you earlier, the controller supports Ethernet communication, so which is much faster. Nowadays, the latest controllers are coming with fiber optic communication, which is even faster. Okay, then this supports redundant controller concept, and typically what it has is a microprocessor, RAM, real-time clock, LED indicators, and then compact flash to program and to carry the program to make the program portable across different controllers. Okay, so you can consider this to be a high-end version of your 8051 controller. Okay, for now, just for sake of understanding. Okay, this is what it looks like, the AC800M controller. You have multiple RJ45 ports available on this. And you need to provide 24-volt DC power supply for this. Okay. So this is just one controller from one company, that is from ABB. The reason I'm showing ABB because I've worked with ABB. I have a lot of data from ABB available, and we do a lot of solutions using this. But this is similar to Emerson or Siemens or any other vendor who provides this. Okay. So as I mentioned, controller changeover within 10 milliseconds here, which means if you have redundant controllers, the second controller is able to take over the entire plant within 10 milliseconds if there is any failure. So 10 milliseconds is quite fast. So just to give you an idea. So this is how the graphical user interface looks like. So GUI means whatever data you are capturing in the controller needs to be shown in a graphical manner to the operator so that he can make some sense out of this. So this is typical architecture what we have. This is the main. So here, as I said, it is very critical for them to have continuous power to the server halls and all. So they have two sources of power supply coming from MACB itself. And then they have their own DG controllers and all. Okay. So so the colors that we are showing here, they have a specific meaning. Like if you have a look at the legend here. So in electrical, what we do is if a equipment is charged or it is functioning, so we the color is red. Okay. So it means that the equipment is on. So this is a circuit breaker. You have an incomer line coming from MACB, and this is the 11 kV bus. So this circuit breaker is closed, which means this bus is now charged from this feeder, and you have an outgoing feeder which is closed, so which feeds to the next board. Okay, so all this data, as I said, is captured from digital inputs, analog inputs from the PLC, and now it is displayed in this manner so that it makes sense to the operator. But essentially, it is just a PLC and some digital inputs, analog inputs, some communication modules. So don't get too overwhelmed by what this whole data looks like. Just try to understand that if the value changes from 0 to 1, it changes to green color. If it is 1, it is red in color. So that kind of animation is done on the screen. Okay. This just gives you indication whether the equipment is closed or open. So that is how the operator comes to know which breaker is closed, which breaker is open, what action he needs to take. Okay, and he can also control, like here you can see there's the open command, close command. So he can issue a command from here. Okay. Yes, as I explained this circuit breaker contactor status, it's red in color means close status, green color is open status, yellow is strip status. So this is what we have defined. It is up to the designer or the programmer. He can change the colors. If you want, you can make green as close, you can make red as open. It is up to you. You should be able to, it is in line with the customer requirements. So whatever you design or you develop, you should be able to help the customer use it, and he should be comfortable using it. Okay. So like here now you can see this is a amber color, which means this circuit breaker has tripped. That is what we are trying to show here. Here this circuit breaker is red in color, which means this is closed. Okay. And here this is green, so which means this is open status. So this is how the field status is communicated to the operator or any person who is controlling this plant. Okay. So then we have some faceplates. This is called as faceplate. There's two proprietary to this protocol or to this product, but this is how you can provide additional information regarding that particular equipment. So this is related to one particular incomer. So the VCB on or status, so that is off. Trip status is that VCB is in trip status. Master trip relay is red. So just a visualization. So you need not be worried too much about it. So just click on some equipment and a detailed status will pop up in this manner. Okay. So then, and the other side you have navigation buttons. So you can click on any of these buttons and directly go to that particular screen. So this color coding legend we have already seen. Similarly, you can issue commands. So you can see here now the breaker is already closed, so you don't have a close command. You can only give a open command. If the breaker is open, then you can only issue a close command. So that is something you can develop in your logic. And these are the multifunction meter values that we have read from the meter. So it has active power, reactive power, current that we are showing in a small view. There are some additional parameters like as you can see all three-phase voltages, three-phase currents, power, frequency, energy. So what is possible in that meter and which is relevant, those data we have captured. Okay. This is a DG synchronization panel. Okay. So the difference is when it is red means this diesel generator is running. The rest of the DGs are off. This is a DG bank. Uh, these are 2.2 MVA DGs. Okay. Then the power distribution units monitoring. You have chiller. The building you need to maintain the temperature for all the servers because these servers generate a lot of heat. So there are 7 chillers on the terrace, and they are able to maintain the temperature between 18 to 24. All these chillers are fed through two different power sources, source 1 and source 2. So that is what is shown here. There are two power sources always available. This is a more of a process management or you can say plant related screen. This is the fuel management system. Okay, you have 4 underground tanks for diesel. Then there are two paths of filling these underground tanks. There are buffer tanks which get filled from these pumps. The diesel from underground tank flows into these buffer tanks, and from the buffer tank it goes to the diesel generators, day tanks through gravity. And any overflow it goes back to the underground tanks. So all this visualization we have developed, and the signals as I said are coming to the server or the controller through hardwired or communication means. Okay, these are the alarm signals. If there's any alarm, it gets generated. So this alarm is visible to the operator, then he can take some action. So what is important is here you can see that ACT means the alarm is in actual state, and when it is RTN, it means that it has returned to normal state. So these are the two possible states for alarm. When there's alarm condition, it goes to ACT state, and then it comes back to return to normal when the temperature is normalized. These are the trends, so you can monitor a trend similar to what I think if you see a trend of intraday any share. If some of I don't know if any one of you have any idea, but if you see the intraday path of or the value of any share, this is what it would look like. So how it has moved. This is a trend of a total power for that building. Okay, so you can say it is a similar to a graph. Okay. So multiple windows you can open. This is very common. This is, I think, even a Windows feature nowadays. Okay. So I think I rushed a bit, but yeah, trying to add too many things in this. Som sir, if it is possible, I could take a few questions.
Yes, sir. So if anyone has any questions or doubts, you can ask now.
Yeah, please feel free to ask. I mean, I know it was a lot of bombardment at such an initial stage. I mean, you must have not had a view of all these things, but if there's any basic questions also, you can ask. No issue.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, so few of my group we have done a industrial training on SCADA PLC programming.
Okay.
So where does the SCADA programming is used
So
in your job profession?
okay. What we do is entirely on SCADA and PLC projects. So whatever requirement, like there is baggage handling. So typically now, if you see, any plant, even if it is a very small plant, they have some or the other type of PLC which is available and which is doing some control action in the plant. So nowadays you can get PLCs as small as like 16 inputs and 16 outputs and a touchscreen HMI which works similar to a SCADA. So where they can input the data on that touchscreen HMI and be able to control. So typically, I mean, whatever we do is mostly on PLC and SCADA solutions. So we don't do anything other than that. But
Yes.
this is applicable in all industries: cement, food processing, paper, pulp and paper, like chemical. This. So what happens in smaller companies is you don't have a plant-wide SCADA, but you may have small individual standalone PLCs. So some PLCs are taking care of a particular area, like pumping area or some other material feeding area. So that may happen in a smaller area. But whereas if you go for large companies like L&T or with Ultratech, Cement, Reliance, and all, they have a plant-wide SCADA system. So whatever is happening in different individual areas, all that data gets transferred to the plant-wide area, plant-wide screens. So okay, what I see is typically a lot of electronics and instrumentation professionals end up working in this domain because there's a lot of requirement in this. Okay, and even newer plants they come with equipments which have their inbuilt PLCs, but there is a lot of maintenance work also which needs to be done. Some modifications have to be done, customization in the existing programs that needs to be done. So there is a lot of requirement in this. If you see Pune, that way is considered to be a center of all this automation business. There are a lot of companies in Pune which work in the automation business. So even all these system houses like Rockwell, Emerson, Honeywell, ABB, they all of them have offices in Pune because there's a lot of talent pool available. So there are a lot of engineers who are able to work in automation, and there's a lot of companies also who are providing these solutions. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So my suggestion is, I mean, going forward, wherever possible, if you are able to do a project in your final year or third year, try to do it on a PLC where you can get a hands-on experience and you can actually see your program working. Yeah, another important thing is see the concept what we discussed today, like the how we get the inputs into a PLC, how we generate outputs from a PLC. That is the most important part. Okay, learning any programming language or I mean all the PLCs support this ladder logic, function block diagrams, structure text, instruction test, and all those things. So all of the PLCs have a similar programming ID for doing this. Just knowing the syntax is not important. Okay, that syntax that can be found in the help files whenever you require it. But understanding how the field signals are coming to a PLC and how you are analyzing that or how you are calculating it and generating outputs, that is most important. Okay, then based on that you can write your code in any of the languages. It doesn't matter. So uh, okay, what I've seen is nowadays there are a lot of training institutes in Pune but they are more focused on training. Like we teach Siemens PLC, we teach Rockwell PLC. It doesn't matter that way. Any one PLC you learn, that is more than enough, but you need to understand what are the concepts behind a PLC. Language you can learn within 2 or 3 days for any of the PLC. Even if you worked on Siemens, within 2 days you can work on ABB. After 2 days you can work on Rockwell. It doesn't matter once your fundamentals are clear. Okay. Any other questions? So this is a viable career stream or career choice for electronics engineers, because if you see most of our like pure electronic jobs, there are very few in India because majority of the manufacturing happens in China. So we don't do so much of like fab level work here. So this PLC based solutions or SCADA solutions, automation work, that is one of the career option available to electronics engineers. Even though it is not a mainstream syllabus, but this is one of the options. Anyway, now most of you would be going for your engineering second year admissions and all. But typically, this is one area which is where you could find a job easily. Right then, I think if there are no other questions, we can wind up the session. Som sir.
Okay, so now I would like to request Master Prishit Guzar, the Secretary of Pune CWIT IAS Students Chapter, to present a vote of thanks for this expert lecture.
Is my voice audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I am Preshit Gujar and I am here to present a vote of thanks for today's guest lecture. I would like to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Manoj sir, for visiting and enlightening us with their knowledge. Today's lecture was full of knowledge and interesting things. It gave deep insights into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. The point where Manoj sir told us about the PLC applications was really informative. I'm pretty sure the precious knowledge that Sir gave us will definitely help us in our studies and future projects. Once again, I would like to thank you, Manoj Sir, for taking out time from their busy schedule and enlightening us with the knowledge. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our academic coordinator, Chandak Sir, and faculty advisor, Shubhangi Ma'am, for giving us permission to organize this guest lecture under CWIT IES Students Chapter. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being a patient listener. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.